Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for putting aside your time this morning to attend our stats panel. So before we start, let me congratulate Ted, the founder of CO2 Connect. It was announced only this morning that CO2 Connect, also known as CO2X, is chosen as the partner in the Monetary Authority of Singapore's MES project Greenplan to enable a more open, trusted, and efficient ecosystem to support the financial sector in the green and sustainability agenda. So once again, congratulations, Ted. So just let's go straight into the panel. So for the panel today, we'll be exploring the economics of green technologies and how the technology bridges the gap between where we are and our goal. So we'll be discussing the roles of businesses, financial institutions, and government agencies, and how they can help Singapore reach our game plan. So today, we have speakers coming from different backgrounds, each bring their own expertise and perspective. Today, we have Praveen, the partner at Ernst Young Climate Change and Sustainability Service. He was also a recipient of Enterprise Singapore Merit Award and an appointed member of ISO Technical Committee. Mark Wang, the CEO of EVFY, a full suite eco last mile log tech solutions provider. EVFY provides a 100% electric van fleet, warehousing, proprietary fleet management log tech, and a van hailing service. Finally, we had Ted Chan, co-founder of CEO, Chief Product Architect of Evercomm, founding member and director of CO2 Connect, and the director of Kingwa Eco Solutions. He was also a recipient of Forbes 30 Under 30 and an external expert partner with United Nations Development Programme. Such impressive credential, everyone. I'll now pass the mic over to this impressive speaker to do a quick self-introduction. Perhaps, Praveen, you would like to start first?
Thanks, Sheena. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm Praveen, a partner with EVFY Singapore, based in Singapore as well. So happy to be here to share our thoughts. So I come from a climate change and sustainability services practice that we have in EVFY. So we have a dedicated practice at EVFY to support our clients in the field of sustainability and wider climate change. So happy to be sharing my thoughts here with our fellow panel member, with Mark and Ted. So over to you, Ted.
Thanks, Praveen. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Sheena. Yeah, so my name is Ted. I'm the co-founder of Evercomm and also a founding member for CO2 Connect. As shared by Sheena earlier, for me, most of my work are on the sustainability spaces, helping organizations leverage on technology to move towards low carbon operations. So happy to engage with the teams this morning to see how we can talk more about sustainability.
Thanks, Dad. Hi guys. My name is Mark. Glad to be here. Thanks, Sheena, for having me. Happy to be with Dad and Praveen as well. So I'm Mark, CEO and founder of EVFY, and we are a sustainable last mile log tech company, as mentioned by Sheena. So we are, primarily a 100% EV fleet service provider for the last mile delivery sector.
Thank you, Mark, Ted, and Praveen for the introduction. So back to the panel proper. Well, as you know, climate change is real, and a concerted effort has been observed globally to slow down the rise in temperature, from top-down policies to bottom-up green new technologies. Everyone is playing a role in bringing about sustainability globally. In Singapore context, Singapore Greenplan 2030 was announced, and in order to advance Singapore national agenda on sustainable development. So one of the main program in Greenplan is shifting our energy towards greener sources, and in order to bring down carbon reduction. And one of the target is to phase out ICE, internal combustion engine, by 2040, and have all vehicles run on cleaner energy by then. So as everyone would know, transport and logistic company or industry is one of the top main carbon emitter globally. And EVFY today are one of the forerunner in operating a full EV fleet, and a warehouse with installed panel is defying the norm in Singapore. Perhaps, Mark, can you share what motivates you in terms of operating a last mile logistic that's operating on a full EV fleet? And as a green operator, what impact would you wish to create?
Sure, Sheena. Motivation Probably I'll start with myself. So primarily in my household, I'm already very conscious about sustainability efforts. I saw my household refuse according to for recycling. I also do urban hydroponics with solar powered aerators, etc. And one of the merger companies of EVFY was already in the sustainable last mile delivery. So what EVFY does is simply amplify what we do on a daily basis by making the commitment to adopt 100% EV in-house fleet of vans and harnessing clean energy from our rooftop solar panels. So we believe very strongly in playing a part in saving the environment, especially during this pandemic, which spiked the second boom for e-commerce. So we hope that by taking the first steps, others will follow. So with the adoption of this EV fleet, there are indeed significant long-term savings, especially when coupled with clean energy sources. So EVFI, we hope to pass on these savings to gig economies, which is the delivery drivers, and in turn convert more of them to make the switch to EVs in an accelerated time frame, which also means less carbon emissions on Singapore roads. Yep.
I see. So I will guess it's more on a from a internal self awareness of
Mm.
the need of sustainability that actually propel you forward into having such a company. That's interesting and very inspiring as well. So so um I would thank you for that, and I really do appreciate the effort in putting in helping Singapore moving towards a more um, greener country itself. So so indeed you are a forerunner in the sustainability in the sustainable industry in terms of the transport and logistics. So Praveen, as the partner and the Ernst and Young Climate Change and Sustainability Service, you have provided expertise in various sectors such as the real estate, renewable energy, manufacturing, infrastructure, and many more. Can you perhaps share your experience in the field of environmental and sustainability? Do you observe an increased demand in transition towards green, as well as perhaps share on the motivation that's shared across in the reason why they are transiting towards more sustainable businesses?
Sure, Sheena, would be happy to. And interestingly, when I look at the drivers behind this, what we see in terms of adoption of green technology, sustainability, Sheena, I would say that there are three drivers that we've observed. Number one is the regulations itself, right? Number two is broadly your investors in financial institutions as to how they're driving it. And number three are the consumers, the end consumers. So if we start with regulations, for example, when you look at globally, the number of countries who have committed themselves to be net zero, you're talking about 40 plus countries or so at the moment who have already committed to be net zero, and over 90 countries who are in the pipeline of doing such commitment at the moment. So, point being is that there is this global commitment that you often see at the country level that translates down to different regulations or initiatives by government. In Singapore, a good example is how Singapore government kickstarted carbon tax, for example. Right? Carbon tax is an initiative to start reducing our carbon emissions, especially from the big emitting companies. On the other hand, you would see Enterprise Singapore (MES) coming up with new, I would say, initiatives, or MES coming up with new requirements. So MES came up with new initiative requirements around the environmental risk management. So they would expect all the banks, all the asset managers, as well as insurance companies to be focusing on environmental risk as a part of their decision making. So I would say regulations, guidelines, international commitments is the one first key drivers that we see. Second one that I mentioned about the investors and financial institutions. So lately we have seen that, in fact, based on our EY's institutional investor survey, we realized that 98% of them actually consider ESG as a part of their decision making now, which again is a huge percentage when you compare 5 years ago. So when you look at it, there's an increased appreciation that ESG can unlock potential, especially the long-term value from an organization's point of view. And on the other hand, there's increased appreciation around climate change as a risk or as an opportunity. Right. So when investors manage their portfolio, they would like to understand the kind of risk they carry, the kind of exposure they have, right? And want to manage that in a proactive manner. So hence that investors and financial institutions, Sheena, we have seen them pretty active lately in terms of incorporating and integrating ESG and climate change factors. And the last one I mentioned about consumers. and naturally, I think we see Singapore consumers are getting much more aware of the choices that they have and much more open in terms of adopting such initiatives. While we are not as high in terms of our awareness level or adoption level compared to other European countries, for example, but it has been increasing steadily, I would say, Sheena. So yeah, so to answer your question, Sheena, the three drivers that we see are around regulations, investor financial institutions, as well as the consumers.
Thank you, Praveen, for sharing. Then I guess in order to bridge the gap between wanting to be green and to be actually green, I guess technological advancement plays a role. So well, today we have Ted, the founder of multiple tech companies that with solution that enables and empower businesses to enhance their environmental performance. Perhaps Ted, you can share how solutions can help in terms of bridging the want and the goals that we want to meet in the future.
Yeah, I think mentioned by Pravin that we really see a big shift when it comes to the interest of adopting ESG as one of the key pillars for many companies. Even when I started my companies a few years ago, 5 years ago, ESG or sustainability was mostly a CSR marketing type of effort, right? That was really the case back then. But you can really see now, especially since COVID or this year, it has really become a main agenda for many of the companies, and definitely government policies and the financial institution putting down their commitment really help spearhead the industry. But the challenge is now is that we know that there's a supply, we know there's a demand, but how do you bridge the gaps? Even when we talk to many banks in Singapore and these regions, all these kind of compliance, international standards is very confusing, and this is something that without companies like EY, and for us CO2X, we work very closely with Pravin. We have no idea how to navigate through that, right? So technology can really process all these data, but in what form do we need to process it so that the financial institution can find that useful, so that the end user can find that useful, so that the government regulators can find that useful? That is really something that we're trying to work on to be able to bridge that gaps. Likewise, when we work with Mark, very similar idea as well. He has EV fleets, but in terms of really demonstrating to the financial institutions or even potentially to his customers that all the green things that he has done, that quantification process can be quite labor intensive as well, right? So it's really for us as technology provider to see how to make people's life when it comes to showcasing their green initiatives, when it comes to quantifying their actual effort in reducing carbon emissions to be as easy as possible. And this is where I see the technology can really play a role in helping to bridge that gap. Sheena, you're muted.
My apologies. Well, I understand that it's quite a cumbersome process and expensive process to actually have certain green reporting or certification. So perhaps how can we actually work about that? Because I do, from the people that I speak with, it is a challenge, because for smaller companies to actually get a green certification, first what I heard is they don't really know how to actually approach that, and second, it costs, and it's not financially or viable for them to actually get such reporting. So in a way, how would technology be able to assist in that? Perhaps Ted or Praveen or Mark, you can just chime in.
And maybe I'll start and I'll pass it to the rest. I think, as mentioned earlier, it's not that green certification is expensive. It's just that depending on the industry, depending on the situation of the companies, there's different criteria and standards that people might not be aware, or they might not know which one to use, and so on, right? So there's a lot of options there that most companies are having a hard time to navigate. And this is exactly why, as I mentioned earlier, to have partners that are expert in this field can really help them navigate through that. I don't think money is a concern here, because with a lot of the support coming in from governments, at least in Singapore, and also by the financial institutions, I do think there are support out there to help company achieve that. But exactly what to adopt, how to achieve, this is something that that companies, providers like us needs to help them bridge. Maybe Praveen, you want to add on to a bit on this?
Sure, Ted. And Sheena, quite an interesting question, right? So when you speak about certifications and stuff like that, so maybe let's take a step back before we reach on to certification. Uh, why do we need certification, and what is sustainability from different perspectives? So to me, sustainability is a set of success factors of an organization that makes them truly sustainable in the long term, right? It is not always environment. It's a wide umbrella of E and S and G, right? It also includes when you speak to, Ted mentioned about financial institution. When you go to financial institution, when you talk about sustainability to them, cybersecurity is a part of it, for example, right? Data privacy is a part of it. When you speak to another company, innovation is part of sustainability, the way they look into it. So my point being is, sustainability in this era should be looked from the perspective of opportunity, right? From the perspective that there's a lot to embark on, there's a lot to actually made business from. And especially when it comes to SMEs perspective, we should be looking at sustainability from the lens of opportunity. Now, with that in mind, the next question is that what would our stakeholders need, right, in order to materialize this opportunity? And from that perspective, if they need proper reporting, if they need some kind of information, either use technology that provides reliable outputs, or if it's a manual approach, then you go for the likes of certification and everything else that's required. So I think that's where technology can play a role, wherein you might not necessarily always have to go for that extensive certification, right? And you might not even need one, because the way that technology would actually enable this, it will make things even more simpler. So, but having said that, certification is only required, or you should only go towards certification if you have established a business case of an opportunity to start with. And then you want to justify, and which will be a cost or a part of your wider opportunity that you have. So from that perspective, it doesn't seem like a big task, Sheena. It seems like, you're enabling that entire opportunity to be materialized. Happy for Mark to add in further.
Yeah, so actually, in my opinion, I think that I'll address the part where technology on the part where Sheena mentioned about technology. In my opinion, I think that technology, to me as a startup, as a tech startup, I think there are two definitions of technology. So in both tech and green technology are significant enablers to allow corporates to become more sustainable today. So I think I would address them both separately. Firstly, the technological advancement in EVs, that's in my field. This affects the battery, the mileage extenders, the solar power, etc. Relatively increases the speed of adoption as people are more confident of the efficiency, which has always been a question for as compared to traditional methods. So however, this comes along with costs, which is what Praveen mentioned. So what eases the cost is the other definition, which is tech, right? So which is what TED is in, which is tech and data. And data provides an undeniable reason for decisions, while tech facilitates the operation and information flows. So personally, I think we have come a long way as a country with all the rebates for EVs particularly, right? With all the rebates to incentivize the early adoption, EVFY as a forerunner, we are enjoying these benefits initially. So I think that there's still a long way to go, particularly in the infrastructure segment. But in terms of the government incentives, etc., I think if there's one thing I need to pick on would be the validity of these incentives, understanding what's beyond that deadline and whether there's an extension or not, right? Because I believe that information will play a large factor for corporates, especially those with more traditional processes.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing. So I guess a lot has been done to actually push Singapore towards a more sustainable country, and there are push factors like, as Praveen mentioned earlier on, like carbon tax implementation to control and limit the emission of carbon greenhouse gases, and also, plus it has been recently announced that the revision of upwards costs in terms of carbon tax, and of course pull factors such as what Mark has mentioned earlier on. The vehicular emission scheme, where we actually provide some incentive for sustainable transportation, as well as building retrofit efficiency, energy efficiency financing by BCA for buildings. So perhaps in your best of your knowledge, can you just perhaps share more to the audience in some of the current policies and programs and incentives that you are aware that can help propel businesses towards more green businesses to push businesses to adopt green initiatives. Perhaps Praveen, you would like to elaborate and share more on that? in your knowledge, what are the existing policies or incentives?
Sure, Sheena, sure. I mean, there have been quite a few of It's a bit difficult to keep track of that now in Singapore market. Singapore's pushing for it so much. But let me give a crack at it, and happy for Ted to chime in. In Singapore, we uh, always believe in the concept of carrot and stick, right? Or carrot or stick in a way. So you would always have regulations or guidelines from the form of stick. Say, for example, I'll probably touch on the key ones in Singapore that we have seen. I shared about MAS that's driving the ecosystem from the perspective of asset managers, banks, as well as insurance companies. And the other aspect that I would like to highlight is about SGX. So last month, SGX closed its consultation on making climate-related disclosures or climate risk as a mandatory topic for all listed companies in Singapore. So what it means is that there's a plan that SGX wants to roll out is that they would like all the listed companies in Singapore to consider climate change as a risk or an opportunity, evaluate that, understand the impact, and highlight the progress and share it with their external stakeholders. Right. So the consultation got closed last month or so. So directionally, it's pretty clear that Singapore would then like to have for all listed companies adopt climate change as one of the mandatory topic, and understand its impact and report on it. So that's another area of regulatory driver that we do see. In terms of initiatives, I would say there are plenty of initiatives, and each of the governmental agency would have something or the other. I mean, whether it's you mentioned about BCA, Enterprise Singapore, EDB, MAS, and I would say uh, to me, each one of them would have one or the other incentives, right? If you want to adopt anything, I'm pretty sure Mark can add on electric vehicles incentive, for example. But point being is that any new initiatives that you see out there, and if it's something new, you would certainly be able to find some or the other program in which you can fit. I can touch upon a few. Enterprise Singapore recently started on a sustainability related grants for SME, right? So it means if you want to adopt sustainability initiatives within your organization, right, and you need support, you can reach out to Enterprise Singapore. MAS has been supporting green bonds, green loans, sustainability linked loans, all such instruments that you see out there in the market. So if you'd like to get support, to your point, Sheena, I mean, all these instruments require some certification, but MS is there to provide you incentive to cover the cost of certification. So if you want to have a green bond that is being listed in Singapore and you want to go for an assurance that's required because investors expect you to have one, MS would be able to cover the cost that you're looking into, and they have certain limit and certain criteria. So point being is, depending on the initiatives, depending on the items, you would see one or the other governmental agencies having incentives to roll this out. Happy for Ted or Mark to chime in if you have anything else that you'd like to share. Ted, Mark?
Yeah, I think those are the initiative that we're also working very closely with the different small and medium-sized enterprise as well as large enterprise as well. The enterprise sustainability program, and also there's a few specialized program as well that came in place just to figure out, because it's very interesting to say that the government is also exploring how they can better effectively help more companies. So a lot of these programs right now is focusing more on the one-to-one approach. But I can share with you that in private, we're also working with the government to see how can we have a one-to-many multiplier effect, because the pace to get more and more companies onto the sustainability journey is really a urgent agenda for the government. Mark, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah. Thanks. I believe that you guys have shared most of it, but for what it's worth, I think that particularly to EVFY, I think the especially from LTA, NEVC, the VES, EAAI, and ARF rebates, particularly for vehicles, that has greatly assisted us in being an early adopter. And these rebates have, as mentioned earlier, previously, I think they have a current timeline, a deadline, and this deadline is up to March 2023. So I think businesses, in terms of this government incentives, etc., I think businesses should capitalize on it as much as we can at this point, because we still don't know what's beyond that. So I also do look forward for the upcoming new inclusions on TR25 for better and more efficient charging infrastructure in Singapore, because right now I think that there are indeed barriers apart from technology. I think psychologically we also know that if I buy an EV, if I want to go green, if businesses want to go green, convert their entire fleet, charging and the charging infrastructure as well as the operation mindset is all very different. So I think that we need a little bit more kind of confidence in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark, Ted, and Praveen. So you have shared, I guess you have shared earlier on, there are three main factors that actually will encourage businesses to adopt green in Singapore to be more sustainable. The guidelines, the financial institution, which are the incentives, cheaper loans, or like there are cheaper loans, cheaper bonds, or then the final will be consumers. So in terms of consumer, it will be businesses or the normal layman. But in terms of green adoption or businesses adopting green technologies or green solutions, what are your thoughts of your current state, given that we have plenty of guidelines or plenty of programs that encourages consumers and businesses to adopt green? What do you think of the current state in Singapore itself, the adoption of green solution, green technologies, given that we have already such policies and incentive in place?
Yeah, I'll take on that question first because that's my main business. I think it's confusing as ever for the end consumer or end customers. Like when we work with different property groups, larger organizations, you can imagine as a asset owner, they're constantly being pitched by different technology provider and say they have the best technology, they can help them go green immediately. So this is the real challenges that is faced by a lot of these property owners or business owners. They want to go green, but everyone is telling them that they have the best tech to go green, and a lot of these technology are also sound very similar to them. And to be frank, a lot of these build asset owners or company owners, they're not so well versed when it comes to clean tech, right? Because it's always ever increasing as well. So this is really one of the main challenges that we see when working with these business owner, and that's why data really plays an important role to really help speak and benchmark and show them from a more data-driven perspective that what technology really works in their environment and what technology could be potentially considered but not yet. Because the fact of the matter is we have the technology we need to help these companies go to low carbon emissions and so on and to be sustainable. But at which stages should the company adopt these solutions, and what are the solution strategy to adopt? That really plays a big differences. It's definitely not, even with a lot of these financing support from the government, from the banks, it's definitely not definitely not a best practices to tell them to do everything at one shot, right? So how to pace themselves is definitely something that is still a problem to be solved. But I do believe that moving forwards with a lot of more guidelines and regulations, and also more technology company like CO2 Connect, hopefully we can help more and more enterprises adopt this journey in a much more simpler fashion.
Thanks, Dad. I think, let me approach this question from more of a layman or the downstream kind of point of view. So, because I think, as Dad mentioned, that there's a lot of things being done in the upstream. Well, with the Singapore Greenplan laid out, the government raising the mandatory sustainability standards, as mentioned by Praveen, at the very least, I believe that we're headed towards the right direction. So I see it as a nationwide effort and not just a government or a policy. There are many countries that have instilled this as a basic lifestyle, to change your day-to-day activities and become more environmental friendly. Such as simple things such as waste classification in the household, or something as simple as changing your LED lights. My opinion is that more people need to understand the importance of what we are doing today is for future generations. And that is very important to know, right? And to start practicing this individual sustainability effort to preserve our environment. So, or that I think probably the like to answer Sheena's question, what could we do? Is that probably even to start off, maybe you can demand an EV to deliver your next online shopping. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something as simple as that.
Hey, Mark, do we have a choice for that? I would like to opt for it.
Me too.
Let's connect later.
Yeah,
For sure,
we should.
100%.
Yeah, we should go to e-commerce platforms, and then see whether they have a choice on a drop down. Okay, I want to go for an EV delivery. That would be amazing, actually.
Yeah, it did. It
I mean,
did.
I
Actually,
guess
they should, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess that's I mean in a way consumer pushing for more businesses to be greener. I think it's
Agreed,
a
agreed,
bottom
agreed,
up kind
Definitely.
of initiative. I think it's
agreed.
that's how it works, I guess. So I mean, I think Mark, you are actually one of the participants in CO2 Connect pilot that was actually announced last year. So sorry, not last year, last month. So I'm just wondering, like, your mission is actually to make a social impact with businesses and consumer to adopt a more sustainable and environment friendly option. So like how would CO2 Connect or in terms of technology help you to push in terms of your vision? How can technology help you? Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Okay, so I think that we are mostly in uncharted waters when it comes to EV fleets in business. Um, a lack of data in Singapore landscape, as mentioned by Ted earlier, it is really hard to quantify the metrics without data. So especially towards financial institutions and to other aspiring people wanting to go green, what makes EV so special, and then what happens when I change to EV? What is the upfront cost, and what is my long-term savings? So these are data that is very rare in especially in our geographical landscape. So we have a lot of data in the States, in other parts of Europe, etc. But yeah, which was actually brought up by Praveen earlier. But in Singapore, it's really a kind of uncharted water still. So for EVFY, we are very excited to join the CO2 Connect pilot in many ways, and one of which is contributing data as the benchmark with a full EV fleet. Yep, allowing us and potential clients to understand the environmental impact that collectively we will make. So if we simply make the switch to EVs, it also allows us to quantify our claim and strengthen our proposition. So the platform also provides eco-conscious participants with more access to like green fundings, banks, financial institutions, which has posed a challenge in the past years. And I'm speaking this from personal experience. So in the past, or rather in the earlier 1 or 2 years, when this whole sustainability and green movement and this hype was all around, it was really a huge challenge for us to approach banks for green funding, where a lot of hype was there. The reason was because there was a lack of data. So and CO2 Connect really helps us to quantify that and tell this the our partners, our collaborators, that we are indeed making a change. We are indeed quantifying the metrics of carbon emissions. Yeah. So I foresee that with the MOU, we will be able to not only benefit from the collaborations and partnerships to accelerate EV adoption, but also contribute to allow other business decision makers to make the change with that data that we collect and we contribute towards. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Perhaps Ted would like to share more on like perhaps he also connect in terms of data capturing because you did mention earlier on that data capturing is one of um, the highlights in terms of what CO2 Connect can do. But perhaps one of the issue here is what data to actually collect. How can we ensure that the data we collect is it's authentic and good enough for the stakeholders to accept. Perhaps Ted or Praveen, you can chime in on that.
Yeah, I think the data to collect when it comes to there's ESG, right? The environmental aspect of data collection is always much simpler, because it's either your carbon emissions, your energy, your water, your waste, and so on. So what to measure is quite clear. The challenges previously has always been, how exactly do you get these data? Traditionally, people are relying more on the manual manpower ways to capture those on the yearly basis, or maybe monthly or quarterly. But I think the main idea behind CO2 Connect is that we can collect these data with IoT devices. So we know for a fleet company, almost down to individual each trip, what will be their carbon emissions and so on. So if you can have all these data directly at the granular level and leverage it on technology or AI to process it, so that at the organization level you can really see the real-time changes of your carbon emissions, I think that can really help them and shape them for better decision making. One of the examples we have already seen is that a lot of these truck drivers, not to the fault of it's not to their fault, but it's human nature where maybe during a lunch break they will park their car somewhere and they will keep the aircon on, right? So you can imagine these large trucks just keep emitting emissions during those periods. So these are the things now, because we're tracking it at such a finer frequency, we can really see this and then be able to feed back these informations to the organization. So this is really something that we hope to make these data more easily available, for organization owners and also for companies, auditing companies like EY, so they don't have to spend the manual effort into cleaning up and collecting all these data just to be able to help see where the organization carbon journey is at.
I just want to add, Sheena, and from a very layman perspective, I wish we could just have 1 meter that measures CO2 emissions. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have it, and it's like we have to work with different forms of data and convert that into CO2. In the sense that if you're talking about as simple as driving a car, I wish we could just have 1 meter in the exhaust pipe that says that X amount of CO2 emitted. I mean, we don't have that, unfortunately. So what it means is we got to work with the amount of petrol or liters of petrol or diesel, or we might have to work with the kilometers being driven. And then, as you can imagine, once it becomes such kind of data, your how precise, how accurate is the data? How do you convert this data to emission, right? And to Ted's point, all come into picture. Now that's where the a lot of work goes into estimating the emission. So these are all estimated emission. These are not actual emission, so to speak, right? So the better is the estimate, the higher is the reliability, and the more your stakeholders are convinced. So the likes of banks that Ted mentioned, financial institutions, the more they would be convinced, right? So I think from that perspective, there's a value chain of data when you look into it, right? From a raw data, from as small as liters of fuel to kilometers to a CO2 emission, and how do you work across that value chain, collect data from different I would say vehicles, for examples, in this case if you have a fleet, and convert that into CO2 or a reduction. That needs an established methodology. So there are ISO standards for that can help you define an approach, but they will not tell you a methodology. Methodology is always bespoke to the kind of project, right? So from that perspective, your starting point might differ, and you would have some generic methodology, but that has to be customized for the kind of project that you're looking into. So that's where technology can play a key role, Sheena, to your question, and how you can actually automate this end to end and bring that reliable value chain of data, right? And right from that raw data to that converted value that has to be given to the financial institution. That's one form of the data. And the second form of data is pretty important. It's an aggregate level. So one is looking at a project level, the kind of pilot that we're discussing about. The second is an aggregate level at an entity level, right? This is where investors, when they look at their portfolio companies, they want aggregated form of data, right? So from that perspective, there's a second layer of aggregation that is to be done across all projects, across all initiatives, across all geographies that you are in. And how does it reflect, and how do you then convey it to investors? So one, you start with the project, one single project, and you convert the data and you churn it. Then you go on to the next level where you aggregate across all projects, across all initiatives, all the entities that you have, and then you report it to your investors, for examples, or to external stakeholders. So the second level of aggregation that's involved, Sheena. So and again, both these levels, technology can play a crucial role in terms of streamlining the entire data flow.
Thank you, Praveen. I understand that COP26 is happening right now, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. So maybe perhaps you can share some of your opinions and thoughts on COP26.
Not sure, Ted, you want to go ahead?
No, I wanted to hear your opinion on this, because this is such a big deal for many of us in the industry, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of mixed reactions. How do you feel so far about the conference so far? Just a high level thoughts.
Well, I think at a very high level, I would say that the three things are coming out very clearly. One is a need of standardization is coming out of very clearly, that there's this need to have a proper, robust standard that converges all existing standards. I think there was this conversation that we had in this panel earlier that there's just too many standards, slew of standards, approaches that are out there. We got to converge it. I think that's coming out very clearly. We see some commitments that are happening in terms of reducing the involvement of That's number two, reducing the involvement of coal and moving away from coal to gas. And I think that's natural because the next wave of decarbonization that you see would be a fuel switch from coal to natural gas, right? And I'm glad to see that Singapore, I think, is more than 95% is gas-based economy already. But you would see other developing countries going in this chart. And number three is wish we could see more commitments from countries, but at the moment, what we do see is that investors and asset managers are ramping up in their expectations, right? That is coming across very clearly, and the likes of big institutional investors have been out there championing this topic. So that's from the positive note, in the sense that you would see this is happening. But right before this, we do see the news released by IPCC that given the existing policies and initiatives and actual emission, are we going to meet a Paris Agreement of a 1.5 degree? It seems like a pessimistic scenario now. So I spoke of the optimistic side. The pessimistic side is that the data says that we might not be able to meet a Paris Agreement of 1.5. The next best shot we have is a 2-degree world, right? And again, I think from that perspective, it shows that the existing policies, initiatives, and commitments that we have are probably not strong enough for us to meet our Paris Agreement that we have, preferably a 1.5 degree scenario. I took a pause here. See, I'm not sure whether Mark or Ted, if you have any opinion there.
No, I think because I've attended a few of these UN conferences previously, I think that the good thing, as mentioned by you, is that at least from a commitment level, from the asset owner, from the financial institutions, from the government, we see it's there. But the path to get there, it's still quite unclear how fast we can run, even with all these support behind. So definitely this is something I think every country is struggling with, even Singapore, right? So that's why we're here talking about it today, and that's why CO2 Connect, we hope to play a role in terms of bridging some of these implementation gaps.
Praveen, you did mention about the need of standardization. So I understand that it is a different part of the continent in the world uses different standards. So how do you overcome that when it comes to perhaps the regional context? How would you overcome the differential in the standards that we have? So what would you usually advise in terms of that?
Well, Sheena, I wish I could have a crystal ball answer and to this question, because everyone is trying to figure this out. But I can share my 2 cents opinion here. I think that when we work with our clients, we often tell them that don't think about standards or frameworks to start with. Think about sustainability in the context of your organization. What is important to you? Don't think of GRI or TCFD or don't think of SASB. There are just quite a few standards out there. So point being is, let's look into how sustainability is important to you, what kind of value it will generate for you in the long term, and how you should embark on it. And when it comes to standards and frameworks and disclosures, we often tell them these are just lens of looking at the same content. So you could have the same content, you could use it a lens of GRI, you could use a lens of SASB, you could use a lens of anything else. When it comes to communication, yes, there are investors who would prefer certain formats, certain standards and stuff like that. But that doesn't change the fact that, say, for example, you got to compute carbon emission, you have to, right? I mean, your carbon emission still stays the same, whether you want to use GRI kind of reference, whether you want to use, say, for example, SASB kind of reference, wouldn't make much of a difference. So what I mean is that your raw set of data, the raw data or the base metrics, wouldn't really change because you know your company, you know your sector, you know your geography, you know your stakeholders. And then it's a matter of slicing and dicing the data to meet different expectations of people out there. So to me, with that perspective, you are pretty clear that this is what you mean when it comes to sustainability, and standards are just a means of communicating and delivering, not a way to drive your sustainability. It's not a way that how you should drive your sustainability in the firm, is a way to communicate. From that perspective, if you take it forward, standard becomes a secondary priority. Yes, it might add to confusion always. It becomes secondary priority. The second aspect is we are looking at IFRS coming into the picture. With IFRS coming into the picture, forming up a new foundation altogether, standard boards altogether, trying to bring sustainability standards, we might see strong convergence happening, right? So we look forward to that. and see how it turns out. And at the same time, ISO globally has also formed a strategic group to try and discuss as to how they should bring that convergence. So I think a lot of stakeholders have already commented that we got to come up with one single answer to this standardization, and now these standard makers have realized it, so they are working towards it. How fast they would be able to work it, we really don't know, Sheena. By when we'll have that golden moment wherein we'll have, hey Ted, Mark, we got one standard, so, so look forward to it, Sheena.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry, just one question on that. We talk about technology, etc., but it came to my mind that it seems like the general understanding about sustainability and the basic, capabilities within organizations to even just understand, how to approach this sustainability challenges is not there for most organizations. So beside adopting technology, do you think, this question may be more to Mark and Praveen, I'm just curious that, do you think training or employee engagement when it comes to educating them about this area, does it really make a difference, or it's more focused on the adoption side of technology?
No, I think that it absolutely does. So I mentioned earlier that cost and education, these are very primary causes, and maybe to illustrate this better, if I can share personal experience, is that particularly in last mile sector, we lease vans to our drivers as well, right? Or we hire drivers, and these drivers they are gig economies. So when we pitch to the diesel van drivers to make the switch, we tell them this beautiful picture of sustainability and saving the world, and very often, this message is just filtered very off quickly. The first question they ask, Singaporeans says, "How much per month? How much can I save?" So yes, indeed, cost and education, it is very, very important, especially to when you operate in the last mile. So the message of sustainability, as much as we are talking on the high level here, understanding all these standards, etc. But on the ground, I think that we still need to educate the masses. That every effort in sustainability makes a difference, and we have to make sustainability carry a little more weight in their decision matrix when making the switch. Yeah, that's my thoughts. See, as an operator, I think apart from even just the public, the general public, I think education starts internally from the company. That, and then they can be the advocates and spread the word. Yeah.
So
Thank you,
if I
Mark,
may
on a
add,
positive note.
Yeah.
Yes,
and,
Praveen, please.
yeah, if I may add on to what Mark said to respond to your question, Ted. uh, and Mark mentioned very eloquently about the wider mass and public. So if you look at the companies, right, and the clients that we often deal with, there's this curve. There's this curve of a curve around the topic of sustainability, having an awareness, acknowledging the topic of sustainability, as well as appreciating it. Right. So in that curve, I see most of our clients are around awareness, and there are very few who would go on to appreciation. So I would, what it means is that even now we do hear thoughts around the fact that, hey, are you sure not? Is ESG really applicable to me? What's the impact? I mean, that appreciation of the fact that this is the impact you're looking at because of ESG or climate change. I think that needs to come in. That really needs to come in, and so we might be in awareness or acknowledgement stage, but we are not really taking that initiatives at a company level. We wait for external. There's always 80-20 rule. The 20% of the market would do that, the leaders, right, and then the 80% of the market would really wait for the push factor to come in. Now, the second aspect here, as what we see, is this is what SGX to some extent realized it too, and I feel, because in their consultation paper, they said that now they would require all the board members, existing or new, to go through mandatory sustainability training. So what it means is they are requiring the board members to actually go through such rigorous training. And even though they have been in the board for long, or the new or existing, because they do realize that the change start from the top, because it's a long-term topic. The changes, I mean, the impact of climate change is going to come in 20-30 years from now, right? And so you do, from that long-term perspective, you do need board to drive it, and that has been a part of the consultation. So we hopefully would do see a change when you see most of these board members having gone through that kind of learning curve where they already are. They already are pretty well aware, but hopefully with this training that they will have to go through because of SGX, there will be more questions coming in for the management that, hey, why this, why not that, how do you do this, oh, I saw this, and that kind of triggers an expectation for the company to drive sustainability. So again, from the client point of view, we would see a change coming in. We have seen that already in last 1 to 2 years because of heightened requirements, expectations, and investors and asset managers looking into this direction, thanks to MAS and SGX driving this market. But yes, it will even increase further, Sheena. Yeah.
That's great to hear, Praveen. So, I mean, in view of the time, we have about 10 minutes left. So, just wondering, the audience, any question for the speakers? Also, we'll just wait for the audience to input their question if there's any. So, while we're at it, I'm just wondering, any positive thought that you might want to leave with the audience in terms of, let's say they have already passed the awareness, they know that they should be going towards green. So any advice to them, be it the businesses or the financial institution, what's the first step they should embark on when, if let's say they already know that they want to go green, how and what they can do? What's the first step? You share.
I think the first step is to engage EVFY as your last mile delivery provider. No, actually, I think the timeline. I think the timeline for green transition has been laid out by the government. It's very clear. So, particularly in Singapore. So, I think that there are challenges ahead. The future. What I want to say is that the future is actually foreseeable now. So it is only a matter of time. We will have to completely transit. So the question is, why not start exploring now? Yeah. Yeah, probably. Praveen and Tad have something.
Praveen, Ted, any to chime in?
Maybe I'll take a crack at it, Sheena, and then I would say two things here. One is, from our experience, we have realized that sustainability is a journey, right? It's a long journey. We won't be able to achieve whatever we want to in a couple of months, couple of years. It takes a long time for leaders to be there where they are. So let's not let's think of it and take that in a bite size and an implementable approach, wherein we're looking into small initiatives towards something big. I think and each and every one of these initiative counts. And number two is, in doing so, understand what's material and what's important to you. We don't have to cater for everything in the wider umbrella of sustainability. Sustainability is huge. ESG and as a topic is huge. And when you look into it, the areas that you would already be doing, the areas that would be new to you. I mean, social factor, taking care of your employees, taking care of your supply chain. I mean, it's a part and parcel of your core business. Don't have to talk about sustainability to come in to do this. You would do that anyways. So try and understand the areas which are most important and material to you, and then drive it, wherein that would have the most and significant impact to you as an organization in terms of the outcomes you want to achieve. So prioritizing, I would say, and then implementing in bite size, trying to understand and appreciate that there's a journey. I think these are two aspects, Sheena, I would like to share with the wider team. Yeah.
That's really a very good advice, because at times businesses can feel overwhelmed. There's so many aspects, so many things to do, but you're right, take it in bite sizes. Ted, you have anything to add on? We do have a question by Jeanette. Do you feel like a carrot or stick approach is better for sustainable changes? If each speaker can talk about from the perspective of the industry they are in, she would appreciate it. Let me just show the question on the stage. So who would like to take on?
Maybe I'll take it on first, and others can add in. I being in this industry for a while now, I think the stick approach is not really working that well earlier, and because one of the reasons is because regulatory, this is such an uncharted territory. Government can't really, around the world, can't really put on the very hard stick as well, right? So that's why people has been still more on the fences. Where I see in the recent years, things really have taking a turn when it comes to people are more interested in this, is more because of the carrot, I would say, right? They do see potentially sticks are coming, but they can feel the carrot now, and they can see the potential where all the financial institutions are and governments are investing into this area. So for now, if you ask me that questions, I would say maybe a carrot approach would work better, but happy to hear other speakers' opinion on this.
Maybe I can share on the. Sorry, Praveen, go ahead.
Please. Go ahead, Mark. Please go ahead.
Okay. Maybe I can share from the drivers or last mile point of view. Actually, I think I concur with that 100%. I think that the carrot approach is much more, feasible in the last mile, in the lower, in the downstream. This is very pertaining to the drivers economy, the gig economies, particularly. Um, a lot of them see. For them, as I mentioned earlier, sustainability. This topic is actually still kind of transparent to them, unfortunately, because it is their livelihood. It is absolutely no fault of them, right? So, I think that many times we have to put in more incentives, and probably, and also to add on to what Praveen mentioned a bit earlier on, was the bite size of it. So probably we have to, package it together in like a bite size incentive towards the driver, the economy, even to the consumer. Like some companies have actually been doing it right now. For one example is like, if you do this, you save the world by doing this. So contribute a little bit, or you pay 50 cents more, for green chopsticks, for example, green utensils or cutlery, for example. So something like this bite size, we will start to then understand what is the impact that we're trying to make, and then the company finally makes a bigger gesture towards a organization. And that then from there, everyone can see what kind of a little impact that we can make. So I think that, in my humble opinion, is that uh, particularly in the Singapore landscape, a carrot approach is still, necessary, in my humble opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, very well covered already. But just want to highlight one item here is, and to directly answer your question in a very short manner, definitely a carrot approach is a sustainable approach, right? Because where you truly embrace it. But the question is, when you reach towards the carrot approach, what's the path that you? I mean, what's the path that you take, right? So, 5 years from now, everyone probably would think that, hey, sustainability is the way to go. It's an opportunity. But there are many of them who would think now that, hey, there's a trade-off. If I do this, I might have to lose something else. So, so again, when we drive this ecosystem, there would always be forerunners, leaders. There would always be people who would question that approach. And if you want to create that ecosystem, you probably need that minimum mass, the critical size that you're looking into, right? And to reach to that critical size, you would have to look into different instruments. Whether regulatory is one of those, or there are any other ways to do that, we can always explore. But the point being is that regulatory drivers help to bring that kind of critical mass that makes the entire ecosystem profitable to go forward. So from that perspective, but to answer the question directly, yes, is the carrot that will keep it sustainable, people believing in it, that yes, there's an opportunity out there. But to reach there might be some support needed from the stick. I feel. Yeah.
Thank you, Praveen, for your opinion. I think it's true because if especially in the Singapore context, carrot is, I would think, is insufficient to push forward. If there's stick and carrot, a good balance between those, I think we are in a good state to actually move towards a more greener and sustainable development. So if you have the time, we have 3 more minutes. Just wondering, any more questions from the audiences? Well, if not, I really thank you. Thank you for your time today. I hope the audience has learned and learned more in terms of the perspective of the speakers, as well as understand in terms of the current state of green technologies deployment and policies and regulations in Singapore itself. And I thank you for the speakers for your time. So I will end the session proper now. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you, Sheena. Thank you, Praveen.
Thank you.
Ted.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ted, Mark, Sheena. Bye bye.
Bye.